They say land remembers. Every stone, every bend in the creek keeps its own quiet account, like the ground itself is waiting for you to listen. For me, that memory has a name, Stony Brook. It's not some grand river, just a winding stretch of cold, clear water running behind my cabin, the kind that catches morning light and holds it tight until dusk. I bought this place 17 years back, right after I cashed out of the energy company I helped build thinking. I wanted nothing more than tomatoes in the summer, a good stack of firewood, and mornings filled with birdsong instead of conference calls. I didn't even glance at neighborhoods with HOAs, not once. I picked this patch because the creek was mine and mine alone, and because the deed was ironclad, mapped out right to the midpoint of that flow. You know, before I wore suits for a living, I was an environmental engineer, the kind of guy who understands how water moves and just how fast one bad decision can ripple through a community. So when I saw the watershed maps, saw the Category B protection stamped by the state, no dredging, no filling, no funny business without an army of permits, I figured I'd found peace. For years I had it. The HOA had no say here and nobody cared to cross my line until Karen Hole showed up. She moved in 2 lots over the ink still wet on her divorce, all smug certainty and pearls. She got herself elected HOA president faster than you could say mail-in ballot. And the first time she walked that rat-sized Pomeranian past my drive, she made it clear my land, my creek, my quiet. She wanted a peace. She started small. Leaves blowing into the common area, something we'll need to address. Or, that fence doesn't quite fit the neighborhood aesthetic. I'd nod, smile, let it roll off me. She knew my place wasn't in the HOA, but that never stopped her. One afternoon, she paused by the mailbox, gave me that tight, closed-mouth smile. The creek's a shared resource, you know. Flows through the whole community. No, I said, careful not to sound angry. It's mine. And it's protected. I'd stay off the bank. She blinked like she couldn't believe I'd said no, then told me she'd bring it up with the board. That was the spark. Not long after I started seeing strangers near the edge of my land neighbors I'd never spoken to wandering the creek bed like it was a nature trail. I put up signs, private property, no trespassing. They didn't care. I didn't bother calling the sheriff yet. Then one morning I found 2 surveyors at the easement, one poking a soil probe into my ground. On behalf of the HOA, the older one said, clipboard in hand, site survey for drainage. On my land, I asked. There's a pending improvement plan, he said, stormwater mitigation. I snapped a photo of his license plate, told them the creek was protected, and sent them packing. But you could feel the storm building. The real shock came at 6:17 on a Tuesday morning. I remember the time because I was halfway through my first coffee listening to nothing but birds in the river when a diesel engine shattered the silence. I followed the noise, and there it was, a backhoe digging up my creek bed, dumping shovelfuls of sand into a bright orange truck. Workers in safety vests waved at me like I was just another neighbor. Who authorized this? I called out. Karen, they said. It's a drainage project. All approved. I just recorded it on my phone, walked back to my house and pulled out the stack of papers that had saved my skin more than once, deed, watershed certificates, every scrap of law on my side. I filed a complaint with the State Department of Environmental Protection and called in a favor from an old friend, Mark, who was now a compliance officer. James, he said after looking at my evidence, that's a Class 2 violation. What's your HOA thinking? They're not, I replied. They just assume nobody's watching. 3 days later, Karen herself showed up at my door in a white blouse, clutching some knockoff leather folder with the HOA's crest on it. Let's not get dramatic, she said, pushing inside like she owned the place. The creek is a gray area. We're just improving drainage for the community. I didn't budge. It's not gray, Karen. It's in my deed. And it's a protected stream. What you did was a crime. Her face got tight, but she tried to play it cool. Maybe we need to revisit your easement, she threatened. Our lawyers are reviewing it. That told me everything. She wasn't just ignorant, she was getting desperate. The next few weeks were open warfare, HOA newsletters calling me uncooperative, anonymous letters in my mailbox saying I was dividing the community. People started avoiding me in the store, pretending they didn't see me. Karen turned it into a public show, spinning my defense as an attack on their children, their parks, their safety. But what she didn't know was I'd built my case like I built my company, quiet, thorough, relentless. Drone footage before and after shots, environmental impact statements from biologists who owed me favors. I sent it all to the state. Then came the twist. The state and the EPA scheduled a joint inspection Monday, 8:30 a.m. That morning, government SUVs rolled up my drive, and Nathan from Watershed Enforcement shook my hand. Most people don't call until it's too late, he told me. We walked the creek. This is unauthorized dredging and illegal removal of substrate, he said, scooping mud between gloved fingers. Jessica, from the EPA, chimed in, using this material for public projects is a Class 2B violation. I told them where I thought the sand went, the new HOA playground. If that's true, she said, it's not just trespassing, it's theft of a protected resource. They hit the HOA with a cease and desist that afternoon, freezing all projects. I sat in the boardroom across from Karen and watched the color drain from her face as they read out the violations. She tried to play dumb. Her board members wilted beside her, but the evidence was ironclad. The state required them to submit every project record, every contractor receipt. Failure to comply meant civil and even criminal charges. You didn't expect me to know more than you, I said quietly. She glared like I'd killed her dog. But Karen wasn't finished. The next morning, she stuffed everyone's mailbox with a glossy newsletter painting the inspection as government overreach and blaming me for bureaucratic vendettas. Some people believed her. Others just got quiet. It was lonely, I'll admit. But my old friend Mark sent an update confirmation the playground was built with my sand. That's a criminal exposure, he said. The next day, I found an anonymous letter taped to my mailbox. Maybe it's time you move somewhere else, I called my lawyer. This is harassment now, she said. Document everything, we may go for a restraining order. That was the real turning point. Local news picked up the story, HOA under state investigation for illegal creek dredging, photos and all. Karen tried another spin, but the subpoenas came fast. She, Brad, and Cheryl, her two yes men, were ordered to testify. At the county hearing, I laid out every document, every video, every legal map. Karen's lawyer argued it was all a misunderstanding, but the state officer cut him off. Good faith doesn't erase consequences, she said. They ruled in my favor, fined the HOA, and suspended all land work indefinitely. But I wasn't satisfied. The creek was still wounded, the bank stripped and roots exposed. So I called Mark, who set me up with Carla Hinder, a tough-as-nails field biologist who'd seen more restoration jobs than most people see sunrises. She showed up at dawn, boots on, ready to assess. You lost 10 years of anchoring here, she said, poking at the eroded bank, but it's fixable. Just as we started planning, the state attorney general's office showed up Mike Capelli in a windbreaker. Two options, he said. Either the HOA pays for full restoration, or we file for environmental damages and freeze their accounts. I asked if there was a way to pin the fines on Karen and the board instead of the whole community. If you'll testify, yes. I agreed, and the next public meeting was like a court drama. Carla explained the damage, Mike read out the violations, and one neighbor after another asked why Karen lied. Cheryl, the board member, finally stood up. I moved to dissolve the board. The vote was overwhelming. The board was finished. Justice, though, never comes clean. The state levied $143, $500 in penalties, itemized and public. Civil liability notices went to the former board. Panic swept through the neighborhood. Emergency town halls, late-night emails, finger-pointing, and apologies. Brad cracked, first flipping on Karen and handing over contractor emails. Cheryl followed suit, citing coercion. Karen vanished. Rumor had her lawyering up, maybe even leaving the state. The interim committee asked me to help draft new bylaws. Non-HOA land was made off limits forever. Life found a new rhythm. Volunteers came every Saturday to help replant and repair. I taught kids how to read the water, how to spot frogs, how to restore what others destroyed. One girl, Maya, drew me a picture of the creek and gave it to me after a day's work. Mr. James Creek protected forever. I framed it. Then out of the blue, the state invited me to speak at a conference, a citizen who'd held the line. I wasn't keen, but Carla nudged me. You want people in other towns to know they can win. So I went. Told them how you don't need to be loud, just relentless. How laws only work when someone's stubborn enough to enforce them. When I got home, I found a letter in my mailbox, no return address. Neat handwriting. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm leaving the state, going back to school. For the first time, I'm not trying to control anyone else's life. Thank you for holding the line. It was signed Karen Holt. Some nights now I sit by Stony Brook and listen. The water runs clear, the grass is coming back, frogs and kids both making noise again. That land remembers all right. And so do I. They tried to take it not with violence, but with arrogance and paperwork. They didn't know what it meant to hold your ground until the water ran clear again. Now, if you've ever tangled with a board or a neighbor or even your own doubts, I'd say this: stand your line. Speak up. You might be surprised how many people are waiting for someone else to start. What do you think? Where's the line between neighborly order and overreach? When does protection become control? Drop a comment below. Let's hear what you've seen. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that every town's got a creek, and every creek has a story waiting to be told.